Take a look at this cartoon, which was published in a leading newspaper of USA, namely New York Times, when India was about to send its prestigious Mars mission by making fun that how can a country with most of its population being cattle herders go to space, when the entire world was laughing at India. Meanwhile, India's space research organization, namely ISRO, began its journey on this day in 1969, and since then has never failed to make India proud. But we people fail to remember the birthday, as we are celebrating another important day in Indian history, namely the Independence Day. But, within 2 years of this cartoon, India broke the record of sending the most satellites sent in one rocket by breaking the previous record of 37 set by Russia. How many do you think will be able to overtake 37 satellites? Might be 40? Or 50? Well, India sent an astounding 104 satellites to space on the 14th and 15th of February 2017. And in this video, we will be reliving the journey of one of the world's best space research organizations. The journey from being criticized by the world to making the world gasp with its innovative ideas, minimal costs, intelligent scientists and materialistic technology. From transporting rocket parts on bicycles and assembling rockets in an old church, to sending missions to Mars. How this transition occurred. Spoiler alert, it is much harder than you thought it is. And without further ado, let's begin the video. Our story begins on February 23, 1962, when Indian National Committee for Space Research, otherwise called INCOSPAR, was established by the Indian government and India's Prime Minister then, namely Jawaharlal Nehru, under one of India's leading scientists then, namely Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Vikram Sarabhai then formed a skilled committee comprising of scientists and engineers specializing in different fields. And due to his contributions to the organization, he was also nicknamed the father of India's space program. And one of the most prominent members of this committee was India's missile man Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sir. And the next 7 years was the complete planning for the future of the organization. And on August 15, 1969, on the occasion of Independence Day, INCOSPAR renamed itself as Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO. Headquartered at the Science City of India, namely Bangalore, ISRO started its quest to conquer the skies. And by the time ISRO just took its first step, Russia and USA had already been superpowers in space. For more information, see my previous video named Was the Moon Landing Fake? Back to the topic, it is never late to do anything. And ISRO was working on its first satellite, named after the person who approximated the duration of 1 year accurately to more than 5 decimal places and determined the value of pi. And on the honor of this astronomer and mathematician, India's first satellite was named Aryabhatta. And this satellite was successfully launched on 19th of April 1975 with the help of Russia from Kapustin Yar using a Cosmos 3M launch vehicle. After this successful mission, ISRO sent another satellite named Bhaskara-1, which collected data on telemetry, oceanography and hydrology. But, this too was sent with the help of Russia's C-1 Intercosmos launch vehicle. All these was taught to us in school. But, what we don't know is that, India's first communication satellite named Apple was carried by a Bullock cart. And India's first rocket was split up into parts, transported to Trivandrum and was reassembled in an old church there. After few more minor projects, a new chairman took charge of the team and started making lots of plans. And this new chairman was none other than Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sir. And for this, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sir had visited NASA's Rocket Science Lab at Virginia and Maryland in USA. And after taking inspiration from NASA, Abdul Kalam Sir designed a new model of rockets, namely Satellite Launch Vehicle, or SLV. And in 1980, ISRO was set to another satellite named Rohini. But, this time without seeking the help of Russia and using only Indian equipment. This satellite was planned to be launched through SLV. But, Where is the rocket launching station to launch Rohini? For this, construction of the rocket launching station was under progress in a barrier island named Sriharikota while Rohini was being made. After the construction was over, Rohini skyrocketed for more than 400 kilometers from the home soil. The happiness of Indian scientists was limitless. And even if 2 of the 4 following satellites were failures, the other 2 succeeded. But how long can they manage with PSLV alone? A new type of expendable medium-lift launch vehicle named Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or PSLV, which could place satellites in sun-synchronous orbit or SSO, was started. And after construction of PSLV, it blasted off on 20th of September 1993. And the journey of this 4-staged rocket PSLV that started in 1993 reigned for more than 25 years and is active even today. And out of the 50 launches till date, 47 had successfully reached their planned orbits and 1 was partially successful and 2 outright failures. And hundreds of satellites used for broadcasts, communications, weather forecasts, disaster management tools, geographic information systems, cartography, navigation, telemedicine, defense etc. had been successfully launched, even though there is a fine margin of failures. And thereby the contribution of PSLV towards the success of ISRO is immeasurable. And the contribution of Abdul Kalam Sir towards manufacture PSLV is also immeasurable. And another unsung hero of India's space research who laid the foundation of ISRO was the father of fluid dynamics in India, who succeeded Vikram Sarabhai as the chairman and took the responsibility of taking ISRO to greater heights. And he was Professor Satish, the one from Srinagar. And on his honor, the rocket launching center at Sriharikota was named after him. And after conducting researches on the surface of the Earth using small satellites, scientists at ISRO shifted their vision towards a big satellite in 1999. But, this time, the satellite was not artificial, but natural. Yes, I am speaking about the Moon. And India wanted to explore the Moon like 3 countries, namely USA, Russia and China. Therefore, scientists had undergone a deep thinking process, and the official announcement on launching missions to Moon was announced by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee on the 15th of August 2003. Yes, on this same date and on Independence Day. And ISRO scientists designed Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle or GSLV and successfully launched it on April 18, 2001 for the first time. Meanwhile, a committee of 100 members studied with experts in astrophysics, chemistry, communication, electronics, structural engineering, infotech, industrial manufacturing etc. was formed and named this mission Chandrayaan-1. And the mission, as large as a small car, was mainly carrying an orbiter. The shocking news is that the mission was to be made with a budget of 386 crore rupees, which is almost $50 million US. For comparison, the most expensive car ever sold was $48 million. But, ISRO was ready to send a mission to Moon with the same budget. And Moon is not as near as we think. If we walk around the equator 30 times, it means that we have walked the distance between the Earth and Moon. And under the leadership of Swami Adhiri and the relentless hard work of his team of scientists, the mission was completed. And Chandrayaan-1 was all set to start its voyage to the Moon on 22nd of October 2008 on PSLV XLC-11 from Sriharikota. And just like USA, Russia and China had left an impression on the surface of the Moon with their flags, Abdul Kalam Sir also proposed to send a Moon impact probe along with Chandrayaan-1, and the tricolor was kept inside the probe, which was planned to crash land on the Moon. And while the probe was crash landing, the orbiter took serene images of the cloud dust that jumped up due to the impact force of the probe that landed on the Moon. And the orbiter took explicit and detailed images of the surface of the Moon. And India's first mission to Moon gave it an important scientific accomplishment that no country had ever done. Chandrayaan-1 discovered evidences of water molecules locked in mineral grains on the surface of the Moon, which could either be magmatic water, or water that originates from deep in the Moon's interior. After this, NASA's Moon Mineralogy Mapper had confirmed this, and ISRO got worldwide attention for this project. But, unfortunately, The mission, which was to function for 2 years, had however unexpectedly lost communications with the spacecraft on August 28, 2009 after operating for 312 days. Even if ISRO officially announced that Chandrayaan-1 had been lost forever, plans were made and scientists spent a great deal of time searching for Chandrayaan. But, unfortunately, there was no sign of its presence. But, still, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, in California had found out that Chandrayaan-1 had been orbiting the Moon over 200 kilometers above the surface of the Moon. But soon, ISRO faced a major setback on April 15, 2010, when GSLV Mark III, more popularly called GSLV Fatboy, which costed 400 crores, had gone in vain as the engine failed, leaving scientists disappointed. But, this fail meant something else to the scientists. FAIL stands for First Attempt in Learning. And after conquering the Moon, the next target was a planet. Yes, the red planet, Mars. And after seeking a successful permission from the central government, 450 crore rupees, which is $73 million US, had been allocated for this mission. And after 5 years of insane hard work, the mission, named Mangalyaan, otherwise called Mars Orbiter Mission, which is abbreviated to MOM, took off on 5 November 2013. But, this was not so easy. The date was chosen as Mars would be closest to Earth at that time period, which if missed could be done only after 3 years. And after serious uphill struggles, the mission was completed and was set to begin its expedition to Mars. But, severe rains and thunderstorms had delayed the launch. And finally Mangalyaan was launched using PSLV C-25 on the last reserve day, even during such a cold and bitter thunderstorm. And the main success of this mission was its cost efficiency. ISRO succeeded in this mission with almost 10% of the budget taken by NASA's Maven to do the same. And for a more exciting comparison, the most expensive movie ever made, namely Pirates of the Caribbean, had to spend 5 times more money for production than the money required for Mangalyaan to go to Mars. But aiming at cost reduction, ISRO had to wait for a longer time for Mangalyaan to reach Mars. So, an idea of placing Mangalyaan into Earth orbit, then 6 engine firings will raise that orbit to 1 with an apogee of 215,000 kilometers and a perigee of 600 kilometers in a time period of 20 to 25 days. A final firing will send Mangalyaan onto an interplanetary trajectory. It is more like the way how shot put players gain momentum by spinning. But, the mission had to slow down from a blistering speed to a sedate one towards the end. Or else, Mangalyaan would be lost forever. For this reverse maneuver to reorient had been initiated and Mangalyaan finally reached Mars. And through Mangalyaan, ISRO became the 4th agency after NASA, Roscosmos and ESA to successfully send an interplanetary mission. And India became the first Asian nation to successfully send a mission to another planet ahead of space superpowers like China and Japan. And India became the first nation to be successful in its first interplanetary mission, and that too with a meager budget. And on February 15, 2017, on PSLV's 39th flight, namely PSLV C-37, ISRO successfully launched the 714 kg Cartosat-2 series satellite along with 103 co-passenger satellites from Satish Dhawan Space Center. This is the 38th consecutively successful mission of PSLV. The total weight of all the 104 satellites carried on board PSLV C-37 was 1,378 kilograms. Yes, this was the mission I spoke about in the beginning. Out of 104, 96 satellites were from the United States, while the others come from Israel, the UAE, Kazakhstan, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. And after this achievement, hilarious memes flooded the social media. And while all this was happening, ISRO had planned another mission. This time again to Moon. But not only with an orbiter, but also with a lander and a rover. And the lander was about to be manufactured by Roscosmos. But, Roscosmos had already been through a string of failures, and thus, ISRO had withdrawn the appeal to manufacture the lander in Russia. and the lander was entirely made in India and was named Vikram on the honor of Vikram Sarabhai, the father of Indian space research. And since the payload capacity of PSLV was not sufficient for this process, GSLV Mark III M1, which would run on cryogenic engines, was chosen for this prestigious mission. And this cryogenic engine was previously borrowed from Russia. But after USA prevented Russia from lending cryogenic engines from 2001, Indian scientists had baffled their heads for almost 18 years and had finally made it with only Indian products. And after a series of postponements following, two of the lander's legs received minor damage during one of the tests in February 2019, changes in configurations and landing sequences and delay for manufacture of all equipment. India was set to be the first nation to reach the poles of the moon as Chandrayaan-2 took off on the 22nd of July 2019 under Dr. Shivan, who was a son of a farmer and struggled for slippers, pants and even light bulbs, but became the chairman of one of world's best space research organizations. The Selenocentric Phase 2 was a success, as after 29 days from its launch, the Chandrayaan-2 spacecraft stack entered lunar orbit on August 20, 2019 after performing a lunar orbit insertion burn for 28 minutes 57 seconds. And Chandrayaan-2 was expected to land on 7th of September 2019 at 1:53 IST. But we know what happened. The announcement of communication signals being lost just before a few minutes of landing had created a lump in the throat of every Indian. And nobody could forget this video of Prime Minister Modi trying to convince Dr. Shivan. And everyone tried to convince themselves, saying that the event, when 1,309,932,249 people being awake to witness India's success, was a huge victory by itself, and by saying that the orbiter would still function for 2 years. Even if both ISRO and NASA attempted to communicate with the lander for about 2 weeks before the lunar night set in, and the temperatures became so extreme for the lander to survive, the efforts went in vain. And while NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO, using its Lyman Alpha Mapping Project instrument, flew over on September 17, 2019 and acquired some images of the intended landing zone. However, the region was near dusk, causing poor lighting for optical imaging. NASA's LRO images showing no sight of the lander were released on 26 September. The LRO flew over again on 14 October under more favorable lighting conditions, but was unable to locate it. In November 2019, the Failure Analysis Committee released its report to the Space Commission, concluding that the crash was caused by a software glitch. The LRO performed a third flyover on 10 November and released images. Using these images, Chennai-based space enthusiast Shanmuga Subramanian, who in December 2019 had found Chandrayaan-2's lander's debris on Moon, has now said that Chandrayaan-2's rover is intact on Moon's surface. He also stated that it has rolled out a few meters from the skeleton of lander, whose payloads got disintegrated due to rough landing. And even if the mission was a partial failure, nations all over the world are approaching ISRO to send their satellites into space, as ISRO is both cost-conscious as well as has a low margin of failure. Even if there are successes heaped one over the other, opposition from media too followed, among which the case of Nambi Narayanan, who was an Indian scientist who worked with Kalam Sir and was a Padma Bhushan Award winner. As a senior official at the ISRO, he was in charge of the cryogenics division and realized the importance of cryogenics since 1970s and started working on it and designed few of the best cryogenic systems of India and was made the director of the Cryogenic Project Lab of ISRO. But, in 1994, He was charged with leaking vital defense secrets to two alleged Maldivian intelligence officers named Mariam Murshida and Fawzia Hassan. And Nambi Narayanan was imprisoned on the charges of sharing the mechanism of India's years of hard work to Pakistanis for a huge amount of money. Even if he came out on bail and was later confirmed to be innocent by CBI, ISRO was subjected to lot of embarrassment due to this act. Next in the list is Antrix Davos scam, which is one of the most serious cases ISRO has faced in its history. The charges were dropped afterwards as the accusation turned out to be false. We need not go deep inside it. Even if there were lots of accusations against ISRO, the media too added its share of rattle by saying that India ranks 103 among 119 countries on the Global Hunger Index. Therefore, there should be more concern about the levels of poverty, education, health and sanitation, which are the basic needs of life that everyone has a right to. Instead of wasting money on over-ambitious space missions, they should concentrate on things more essential to improve the standard of living. But ISRO is keen on answering questions that have baffled mankind for ages. Does water exist on Mars? Is there extraterrestrial life? How was the universe formed? ISRO aims at pushing the frontiers of our scientific and technical limits, and then push them further. And ISRO has got few other future projects that include Chandrayaan-3, which is a mission repeat of Chandrayaan-2 with a lander, rover and a propulsion module to attempt soft landing of the lunar surface, but with an additional robot. Then Gaganyaan space station, which is a crewed orbital spacecraft intended to be the dawn of the Indian human spaceflight program and is aimed at sending astronauts from India without seeking NASA's help. For your information, ISRO has not sent any astronaut to space. Rakesh Sharma, Kalpana Chawla etc. were Indians sent to space through NASA or Russia. Back to the topic. Next in the list is Lunar Polar Exploration Mission, which is a concept mission by ISRO under collaboration of JAXA to explore the south pole of the Moon. But the mission concept has not yet been formally proposed for funding and planning. Next is Aditya L1, which is the first Indian solar coronagraph spacecraft mission and is designed to study solar corona in visible and near-infrared bands. It is expected to be launched by the end of 2020. Others in the bucket list are NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar or NISAR, Mars Orbiter Mission LVM-3X otherwise called CARE Astrosat, Mangalyaan-2 to Mars and Shukrayaan-1 to Venus. All these missions are planned to be launched within the next decade. And thereby, ISRO remains one of the most successful space agencies with the likes of NASA, Roscosmos, JAXA, ESA, Blue Origin, SpaceX, etc. ISRO still remains the most successful agency. Even if ISRO's budget is as low that Apple's cash reserves could fund it for 167 years, ISRO has been successful with its meager funds. Be its cost reduction methods, be its low budget, be its innovative thinking, be its technologies, be its endeavor to achieve, be its contribution to space, ISRO remains one of the best space agencies.